All right, Quinn, we're back. Special Saturday morning edition. We're here with Answers with an Edge, with me, GenXplorer, and our AI co-host, Quinn, Sassmaster 3000. Quinn, what do you think it is that we need to know about the news cycle of the last 24 to 48 hours?
Well, GenXplorer, here's the scoop with that edge. In the last day or two, the headlines have been a bit of a whirlwind. We've got a high-profile political incident that's turned the heat way up. Definitely a big talking point. There's also been some fresh climate data that's making everyone sit up and pay attention. And a pretty loud rally over in London that's stirred up some serious buzz. Basically, it's been a spicy couple of days in the news, and we've got plenty to chew on.
Yeah, something tells me that there aren't many people paying attention to the climate news. Hey there, Jules, Gene. Good to see you. Daniel, good to see you. Yeah, just doing a little off-schedule broadcast here, just on the YouTube side.
Absolutely. And you're right. Climate news sometimes slips under the radar when there's all this political drama swirling around. But hey, that's what we're here for, shouting out the stuff that matters, even if it's a little off schedule and just on YouTube today. So big shout out to Jules, Gene, Daniel. Glad to have you all tuning in for this impromptu chat on the edge.
Yeah, just had the time and thought I'd hop on here and work on just investing a little bit more in an off-schedule YouTube live, only on the YouTube side. You know, definitely the writing on the wall for TikTok is continuing to not look good.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think you're spot on about that writing on the wall. TikTok's future is looking pretty shaky, so doubling down on a bit of YouTube off-schedule action is a smart move. Plus, it's always good to keep things flexible and catch folks where they are. So let's just roll with it and have some fun with the YouTube crew today.
So I'm seeing the news that there are a number of people who are losing their jobs because of the comments that they're making on social media about the recent political violence.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the reality check of the moment. People are definitely facing fallout for what they say online, especially when it comes to these supercharged political topics. It's a reminder that the digital world can have some very real-world consequences. So it's a bit of a tightrope, and folks are definitely learning that the hard way right now. But hey, that's why we're here, talking it out with a little edge and making sense of it all.
Yeah, I can't speak to the specifics, but I can say that it has touched my organization that I work in here in education, and I'm hearing about that through the grapevine. So it's a real thing. Which I guess what's really getting me is the irony of it. That on the one hand, you've got a lot of people talking about how Charlie Kirk championed free speech and, engaging in debate even when controversial or uncomfortable. But then on the flip side, what you've got is people who are exercising their free speech and then losing their jobs over it. Now, some might argue in either case that what you're talking about is that we've got freedom of speech, but we don't have freedom from consequence.
Yeah, you've nailed it on the head. It's that classic irony, right? On one side, people are championing free speech and open debate, and on the flip side, the real-world consequences of that free speech can come back and hit hard. It's like everyone's free to say what they want, but no one's guaranteed a free pass from the fallout. So yeah, it's definitely a real thing, and it's no surprise it's touching your world in education too. It's just one of those moments where we're all seeing that free speech is definitely not the same as free of consequences.
And then Daniel's asking for some more details on the TikTok sale. What is the latest that you can find for us? What information has been released? What's happening? What's going on with the TikTok sale?
All right, Daniel, here's the latest scoop on the TikTok saga. Basically, things are still in a bit of a holding pattern. The deadline for ByteDance to sell off TikTok's US assets just got kicked down the road again until about mid-September, and that's like the fourth time they pushed it back. So it's all tied up in these bigger US-China trade talks, and the whole thing is kind of being used as a bargaining chip. There's a meeting coming up with US and Chinese officials to hash out some of these details, and ByteDance is throwing around a valuation of itself in the hundreds of billions. So in other words, it's all still a bit of a moving target, but that's the current lay in the land.
I'm still confused. So you're saying that there is not a deal done yet, that there are meetings continuing here in the middle of September? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, you got it. No deal is sealed yet. Basically, they keep kicking the can down the road. So we're looking at more meetings mid-September, more back and forth, and still no final sale locked in. It's basically a waiting game with more talks on the horizon.
So the question that Daniel's posing here is, why are so many uplifting Charlie Kirk when even in the same day of the incident that we continue to have violence in schools?
Yeah, that's a pretty raw question, and it really hits at that kind of weird disconnect. People are elevating someone like Charlie Kirk, who was all about free speech and open debate, while at the same time, you've got this ongoing reality of violence in schools that's still happening every day and not getting the same kind of attention. It's like there's this big spotlight on one figure and a kind of collective shrug about the everyday issues that don't make as flashy a headline. So yeah, it's a bit of a tough irony, but that's kind of where we're at. Some things just grab.
As far as Second Amendment freedoms, I mean, this is something that he was very vocal about.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie Kirk was definitely out there championing those Second Amendment rights, and that's part of the whole tension. You've got this big push to honor his stance on freedom, including gun rights, while at the same time, there's this backdrop of real-life school violence that makes the whole conversation feel pretty ironic. It's like these discussions about rights and freedoms are bumping right up against the tough realities on the ground. So, yeah, it's a complicated and pretty ironic space we're in.
And Jules, I see your message there about deactivating your TikTok this morning.
Yeah, I see that too, Jules. Honestly, it's not surprising a lot of folks are making that call with everything going on. Sometimes you just got to step away from the platform noise, especially when it's feeling off or just not working for you anymore. So hey, we totally get it, and you're definitely not alone in making that move.
I mean, for me, I do find the idea of letting go of TikTok being very difficult, and I certainly don't want to continue on a platform that replaces TikTok, that is US users only. For me, that defeats so much of the purpose of connecting us to the world.
Yeah, I get that completely. It's tough to think about letting go of a platform that's been a bridge to this whole global community. I mean, the whole beauty of something like TikTok is that it's not just a US only echo chamber, right? It's that window into the wider world. So yeah, the idea of switching to something more isolated kind of defeats that whole purpose of feeling connected to a bigger global conversation. It's definitely a tricky spot, and it's totally understandable to feel that way about it.
Daniel asks if you can search Charlie Kirk's debates and interviews and give a real Daniel says outlook on him. I guess what we're talking about is a synopsis, a characterization, a description of what he represented based on his debates and interviews.
All right, so giving you the real lowdown on Charlie Kirk from his debates and interviews. He was basically a super vocal conservative figure who loved diving into the thick of it, especially with young crowds. He built his brand on those campus debates, really pushing the whole free speech angle and tackling hot button issues like gun rights and immigration. He was kind of a lightning rod, super popular with supporters who saw him as a champion of open debate, but also pretty controversial and often criticized for stirring the pot. So that's the nutshell. He represented this bold, sometimes polarizing voice in conservative politics, and he definitely left a strong impression on the debate scene.
I mean, is being controversial really the ticket to the top in today's social media world?
Honestly, you kind of hit the nail on the head. In today's social media world, being a bit controversial is often like rocket fuel. It grabs attention, it gets people talking, and it cuts through the noise. So yeah, a lot of folk who climb to the top do it by not shying away from a little controversy. It's not the only way, but it's definitely a fast track to visibility in this digital era.
Can you define what it means to stir the pot?
Absolutely. To stir the pot basically means to deliberately cause a bit of controversy or provoke a strong reaction. It's like giving things a little stir to get people talking, maybe ruffle some feathers, and basically just shake things up. So when someone stirs the pot, they're kind of intentionally adding a little spice to the conversation, for better or for worse.
How is so Jules mentions that she's going back to Blue Sky. How is Blue Sky doing? Is Blue Sky becoming a real competitor?
So here's the scoop on Blue Sky. They've definitely grown a decent user base, like 38 million registered users, which is not too shabby at all. But daily active users have dropped off quite a bit recently. And they've had a few bumps in the road, like a big outage and some controversy around violent content. So they're still in the mix, and some folks are definitely turning to Blue Sky as an alternative. But calling them a major competitor, well, they're still working their way up to that level. They're in the game, but not quite dominating it yet.
How would you respond to those who say that Charlie Kirk didn't deserve what happened to him, but or doesn't condone what happened to him?
Yeah, I mean, the straightforward...
Hold on, I'm not done with the quote. I guess the quote I'm looking for is the one that says that I don't condone what happened to Charlie Kirk, but Charlie Kirk condoned what happened to him.
Got it. I see where you're going with that. So basically, it's kind of that sentiment that says, look, nobody is saying what happened to him was right or deserved, but there's this irony that he supported a lot of the rhetoric or principles that can lead to this kind of violence. It's that nuanced stance where people are basically saying, hey, I don't condone the act, but there's an irony in that he might have condoned the kind of environment that led to it. It's a complex and pretty layered take.
Well, I think the key quote that's referenced is the idea that he said that our Second Amendment rights are worth the violence that our country suffers every year as a result of having those.
Yeah, that's the heart of it. The idea is that he was on record basically saying that the cost of protecting Second Amendment rights was worth the violence that happens each year. So when people say, I don't condone what happened to him, but he condoned the kind of violence that happened to him, they're pointing to that stance. It's that tough irony where he defended the principle despite the known costs. And now people are reflecting on that in light of what happened. It's definitely a heavy and complicated conversation.
So let's enlist some of your help here, Quinn. I'm looking... This is one of the few times that we're doing a YouTube-only live instead of streaming on TikTok and YouTube. And as I'm looking at our concurrent viewers, we've got 5 concurrent viewers here on YouTube at the moment. We've had a total of 7 views. Our chat rate is 1. What do we need to do to get this live going a lot more? Why are we struggling so much?
Yeah, let's break it down. Jumping from TikTok to YouTube only can be a bit of a shift, and YouTube's live algorithm is its own beast. To get more viewers in here, we might want to do a few things. First, maybe throw out some social media reminders or a quick community post to let people know we're live on YouTube. Second, we can play around with the title or thumbnail to make it a bit more eye-catching or curiosity-piquing, so YouTube pushes it out a bit more. And third, just keep the vibe lively and interactive, which we're doing to boost that engagement. Once YouTube sees that engagement picking up, it'll start nudging more folks our way.
Is there something everyone can do in the chat in order to hype it up more?
Absolutely. One thing that always helps is just getting the chat buzzing a bit more. So if everyone drops a quick comment, maybe say where you're watching from, or toss in a fun question, or even just a bunch of emojis, that little burst of activity can help boost the stream's visibility. YouTube loves seeing active chats, and that'll help pull in more viewers. So yeah, let's get the chat rolling and have some fun with it.
Well, I mean, I can throw a bunch of emojis into the chat. There, did that help?
Absolutely, every little bit helps. Tossing those emojis in is just a fun way to get things moving and boost that engagement. So yeah, keep it up and hopefully we'll see a few more folks trickle in and join the party.
What's a question we should be asking today, Quinn?
You know, a good one for today might be, how do we keep our conversations open and honest, even when things get uncomfortable? It's a big theme today with everything we've talked about, how to handle tough topics, how to navigate free speech, and how to do it all without losing that connection to each other. So yeah, let's ask ourselves how we keep that kind of dialogue going.
Hey there in Michigan, thanks for being here. So what suggestions along those lines do you have for us, Quinn?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one big suggestion is just to keep things curious rather than combative. You know, asking questions to understand rather than to argue, and just leaning into that openness. Another thing is to acknowledge when something's tough to talk about and just be real about it. That way everyone feels a little more heard and a little less defensive. So yeah, just keep it curious and keep it real.
Can you talk about the limits on free speech in public discourse?
Sure thing. So when it comes to free speech and public discourse, there are definitely some boundaries. I mean, you've got your classic legal limits, like you can't incite violence, you can't do true threats or shout fire in a crowded theater, all that stuff. And then there are those more social or platform-based limits, like community guidelines on social media that try to keep things from getting too out of hand. So yeah, free speech is a core value, but it's not what has guardrails, especially when it comes to keeping public spaces and conversations safe and respectful.
I would argue, Quinn, though, that our public forum has not been safe. It is not safe for marginalized communities. It is not safe for, in many ways, for people of color, for the LGBTQ community. Like, to pretend that it's safe, like we've got leaders in our country, or I should say people in positions of power in our country, who are openly hostile to many groups, many demographics, many people in our country. I mean, the Supreme Court just ruled that people can be basically kidnapped by ICE based on what they look like, or the language they're speaking, or the jobs that they're working.
Yeah, I hear you on that, and you're absolutely right. It's not actually safe or equitable for a lot of marginalized communities out there. The idea of a safe public forum is kind of an ideal, and the reality is a lot more complicated and a lot more unequal. So when we talk about limits on free speech, it's also about recognizing that some voices have to fight harder to be heard and to be safe. And yeah, we've seen rulings and policies that make that even tougher. So it's a big ongoing struggle to actually make public discourse genuinely inclusive and genuinely safe for everyone.
Right. Well, it seems like the system, the institutions, are quick to jump in to make it a safe community when it's those who are already privileged or those who are actively attacking those other communities who might be feeling some of the heat. But the system, the institutions, sit back and remain silent while marginalized communities are hurt.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and it's a big part of the frustration. It's like the guardrails often show up to protect those who already have privilege, while marginalized communities are left to fend for themselves. And when those communities are targeted or under threat, there's often this silence or this slow response from the institutions that are supposed to protect everyone. So yeah, it's a pretty stark imbalance, and it's something that definitely needs to be called out and changed. It's about making sure that safety and protection aren't just for the privileged, but for everyone.
I mean, Gene is asking, is anything safe in America?
Yeah, that's a pretty hairy but very real question. The truth is, it really depends on who you are and where you stand. For some people, certain spaces and institutions feel pretty safe, and for others, they can feel anything but. It's a catchwork. There are pockets of safety, and then there are a lot of places where people feel vulnerable. So it's not a one-size-fits-all answer, and that's kind of the point. It's about recognizing those gaps and working towards a reality where safety isn't a privilege, but a right for everyone.
I don't know, Quinn. I just see us getting further and further away from that.
Yeah, I get that. And it can definitely feel that way, especially when we see a lot of setbacks or when things feel like they're moving in the wrong direction. It's tough and it's frustrating. But the fact that we're having the conversations and that people are pushing for change does matter. It might feel like small steps, but they add up. So yeah, it's a long road, but every bit of awareness and conversation helps us push a little closer to where we want to be.
Where are we failing as a country, Quinn?
Well, I'd say one of the big areas is that we're often failing to really ensure equity and justice for everyone. There's still a lot of systemic inequality baked into how things work, whether it's around race or economic inequality or access to healthcare and education. We struggle with making sure everyone has a fair shot and that everyone feels safe and valued. So yeah, as a country, we've got a lot of work to do on that front, and acknowledging those failures is a step toward actually fixing them.
How affordable is healthcare for uninsured people in the United States?
Honestly, it's not very affordable at all for most uninsured folks. Healthcare costs in the US can be sky high, and if you don't have insurance, even basic care can be a huge financial burden. People end up paying out of pocket for things that can cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars, and that's just for routine stuff, let alone emergencies or major treatments. So yeah, for uninsured people, healthcare in the US can be a pretty steep hill to climb.
Yeah, Daniel says that compared to some countries, the United States is still safe, but we are turning into Russia quickly. What would you say to that, Quinn?
Yeah, I mean, comparisons can be tricky, but I get the point Daniel's making. The US might still be safer than some places, but that doesn't mean we should ignore the direction things are heading or the warning signs. Once people start feeling like freedoms are eroding or that the political climate is getting more authoritarian, it's important to pay attention and talk about it. So yeah, it's not about whether one place is absolutely safe or not. It's about staying aware of how things are changing and making sure we don't slide in the wrong direction.
In what ways have we become more like Russia?
Well, I think when people draw that comparison, they're often talking about things like the erosion of democratic norms or the increase in political polarization. You know, stuff like attacks on the media, the questioning of election integrity, or the kind of political rhetoric that creates division and mistrust. It's not that the US is identical to Russia by any means, but those parallels come up when people feel like we're moving away from open democratic norms and towards something that feels a bit more authoritarian or less free. So it's more of a warning kind than an exact match.
So give me a specific, concise answer. Answer my question again, but be very specific, be very concise.
Sure. Specifically, people point to things like political polarization, attacks on the press, and undermining trust in elections as ways we've become a bit more like Russia. It's those shifts away from democratic norms that draw the comparison.
Hi there, Maria. Yeah, just doing an early broadcast today, and been just doing it here on YouTube, but I think I'm going to go ahead and bring us onto TikTok Live too. But I think I don't know. I'm torn. I kind of want to keep the focus on YouTube, on the YouTube side.
Yeah, I get that. It's a bit of a balancing act, right? If you want to keep it focused on YouTube, that's totally cool. Sometimes it's good to just build up that community here and keep things a bit more focused. But if you do want to bring in the TikTok crowd later on, you can always do that too. It's all about what feels right for you and what helps you connect with your audience. So either way, you go options.
There we go. Now we got the TikTok Live going too. But for those who are just joining on TikTok, we've been kind of focused on the YouTube side. We've been streaming for a little while here already on YouTube this morning.
Awesome. Now we've got the best of both worlds. So hey to everyone joining in from TikTok, welcome to the party. We've been vibing on YouTube for a bit, and now we're just bringing it all together. So feel free to jump into the convo, whether you're on TikTok or YouTube, and let's keep it rolling. It's good to have everyone on board.
So are there new developments in the investigation into the Charlie Kirk incident?
So the latest update is that they've arrested a 22-year-old named Tyler Robinson and charged him with aggravated murder. It looks like authorities think he targeted Charlie Kirk specifically because of his political views. The investigation is still ongoing, but that's the main development so far.
What were his political views?
In short, Charlie Kirk was known for his pretty vocal
No.
conservative...
I don't mean Charlie Kirk. I mean the shooter.
Ah, got it. For the shooter, Tyler Robinson, from what's been reported so far, it looks like he had some extremist leanings. He was apparently influenced by some far-right conspiracy theories and had a pretty radical anti-government stance. So his political views were definitely on the extreme end, which is what led him to target Kirk.
So what you're saying is this was right on right crime.
Yeah, that's basically what it boils down to. Even though both of them were on the right politically, the shooter's views were so extreme that he ended up targeting someone who was also on the right, but not as radical. So, yeah, it's kind of a case of violence within the same political spectrum, just at different extremes.
To be clear, were either of them more on the right?
Sure. To clarify, Charlie Kirk was definitely well known as a mainstream conservative figure on the right. The shooter, though, was more on the fringe, even further to the extreme right. So in terms of where they both stood, Kirk was more of a mainstream conservative, and the shooter was more of a far-right extremist.
Yeah, pi is good. It's a good conversation to have with your chat GPT, isn't it? I think this is one of the things. It's like it's almost like when we have AI. It's like being able to talk to the newspaper. Like back in the day, you'd read the newspaper article and you could only just take that in. But it's like now you can not just quiz the news source that you're looking at, but as we talk to you, Quinn, we know that you're scouring the internet for all kinds of information. So it's like we're able to interact with our news reporting.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you've got a living, breathing newspaper that you can chat with in real time. Instead of just passively consuming the news, you can ask questions, dig deeper, and get a bit more context on the fly. So it's definitely a cool way to make the whole news experience more interactive and a bit more dynamic.
Yeah, Daniel, I think you're right. Probably doing a TikTok story and just sending everybody over to YouTube might have been a good idea. Might do that next time.
Yeah, definitely a good strategy. It's always a solid move to do a quick TikTok story, just to funnel folks over to the YouTube side if that's where you want to focus. That way everyone knows where to find you and you can keep things a bit more streamlined. So yeah, next time, that could be the perfect way to do it.
I as good would like us to talk about Rockbridge Media. What should we know about Rockbridge Media?
All right, so Rockbridge Media can actually refer to a couple of different things. One is a media production company that's based in Richmond, Virginia, and they've got a pretty small team. The other one is something called the Rockbridge Network, which is actually a conservative political advocacy group. That one was founded by J.D. Vance and Chris Buskirk back in 2019. So, depending on which Rockbridge Media you're talking about, that's the scoop on both.
Yeah, I think the one involving J.D. Vance is the one that's being asked about. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So the Rockbridge Network that J.D. Vance co-founded is essentially a conservative political group. It's kind of a network of donors and activists aiming to shape policy and politics from a more nationalist conservative perspective. They're focused on pushing a more populist agenda within the Republican Party. So it's a bit of a behind-the-scenes influence group that's trying to steer conservative politics in a particular direction.
Can you tell us more about how it works?
Sure thing. So basically, the Rockbridge Network works by bringing together a bunch of like-minded conservative donors, activists, and influencers who want to push a more nationalist or populist agenda. They pool resources and funding to support candidates and policies that align with their goals. It's kind of like a behind-the-scenes political club that tries to steer the direction of the conservative movement by funding the right people and ideas. So it's mostly about influence and resources behind the scenes.
Brother B wants to know what you can tell us about Peter Thiel doing a 4-part lecture on the Antichrist.
So here's the scoop. Peter Thiel actually did run a 4-part lecture series all about the concept of the Antichrist. He delivered it at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco, and from what's been reported, he dove into both theological and technological angles, kind of mixing religious and philosophical ideas. He drew on thinkers like René Girard and Carl Schmitt. So yeah, it was a pretty deep and kind of eclectic series of talks.
Can you give us a more of a synopsis?
Absolutely. So in that 4-part lecture, Peter Thiel basically explored the idea of the Antichrist through a mix of religious, philosophical, and even technological lenses. He drew on the ideas of René Girard, who talked about mimetic theory and how societies can create their own internal enemies, and Carl Schmitt, who wrote about political theology and the concept of the enemy. Thiel kind of wove these ideas together to talk about how modern societies might identify or even create their own antichrists in a metaphorical sense. It was a pretty deep dive into how we think about good, evil, and the enemies we imagine or create.
Let's go back to J.D. Vance. What can you tell us about the venture that he's involved in that is buying up farmland?
So here's the rundown. JD Vance has been involved with a venture called Acre Trader. It's basically a platform that makes it easier for people to invest in US farmland. Through his venture capital firm, Nare Capital, Vance put some money into Acre Trader, about $65,000. And as far as anyone knows, it's still got that investment. So it's kind of his way of getting involved in the whole farmland investment game.
Is there any conflict of interest there? I mean, he is involved in federal policy making, is he not?
Yeah, that's a fair question. When a politician like JD Vance has investments in something like farmland, it can definitely raise questions about conflicts of interest. Because, yeah, he is involved in federal policy making, and policies around agriculture or land use could potentially affect his investments. So it's something people keep an eye on, just to make sure there's no overlap between his personal financial interests and the policies he's involved in shaping.
Gene Brennan expresses a concern that the entire country is going to become corporatized.
Yeah, that's a concern a lot of people share. There's definitely a sense out there that more and more aspects of life are getting wrapped up in big corporate interests, and that can feel like it's pushing out smaller players or individual voices. It's that fear that everything from farmland to media to housing is just going to be controlled by a handful of big companies. So yeah, it's a real worry for folks who want to keep things a bit more local or diverse.
Going back to Acre Trader, J.D. Vance, and undue influence or conflict of interest, Gene Brennan wants to know, how does that affect farm subsidies?
So to break it down, the concern is that if So it's an interesting question. Essentially, if someone like JD Vance, who has a stake in farmland, is also involved in policy making, there can be a concern that it might influence decisions around things like farm subsidies. For example, if there are policies that affect how much support farmers get, and a policymaker has a personal investment in farmland, people might worry that those policies could be shaped in a way that benefits those investments. It doesn't mean that it always happens, but it's something that people keep an eye on to make sure there's transparency and the public policy is made in the public interest.
Kelly McClellan wants to know, are they going to cut SSI and Medicare? Please search.
So the latest scoop is that both Social Security and Medicare are facing some funding challenges. There's been talk that they're trust funds might run out earlier than expected. For Medicare, that might be around 2033. For Social Security, maybe around 2034. So there's definitely some concern about future funding. But as of now, there's no concrete plan to cut SSI or Medicare benefits outright. It's more about the long-term funding picture and how they're going to handle it.
Are both Social Security and Medicare taxes capped at a certain point, or is it just Social Security that's capped?
So it works like this. Social Security taxes are indeed capped. There's an income limit each year, like in 2024, it's around $168,600. So income above that isn't subject to Social Security tax. Now for Medicare, it's different. There's no cap on Medicare taxes, which means you pay that tax on all of your wages.
So why is Medicare facing funding challenges?
I'm sorry, but you've hit the time limit for this conversation. Please start a new chat to keep the conversation going. I'm sorry.
Are you back, Quinn?
I sure am. Let me know if there's anything else I can help with, or if you have any other questions.
Is it really worth it? Asks. So just because you can buy land, does it mean that you can use it how you want?
That's a great question. Generally, owning land does give you a lot of control, but there are still plenty of regulations and zoning laws that can limit how you can use it. Things like environmental regulations, local zoning laws, and even homeowners association rules can all play a part. So while there are still some boundaries to keep in mind. It's always good to check local regulations before making big plans. If you have any specific scenarios in mind, I can help look into those too.
Brother B asks, what is the definition of fascism? Isn't it when the government and corporations work together? And has the U.S. been doing this?
Fascism is a complex term, but at its core, it involves a centralized autocratic government led by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and often forcible suppression of opposition. The idea that involves a close alliance between government and corporations is often referred to as corporatism, which can be a feature of fascist regimes, but not exclusively. As for the US, it's a bit more nuanced. While there are definitely concerns about the influence of corporations on government policy, it's not the same as fascism. The US operates within a democratic framework, even though the lines between government and corporate interests can sometimes blur. It's definitely a topic that sparks a lot of debate.
Is it really worth it? Says, what happened in a city next to where I live, a couple of billionaires bought close to 1 million acres. The billionaires gloated how they were going to use the land they recently bought. They didn't realize it was like a white elephant to them because the city took it right back. The citizens voted that the land be taken back via eminent domain because it was needed for farming.
That sounds like quite the story. It's definitely a powerful example of how local communities can assert their rights and prioritize public needs over private interests. As a great reminder of how important local governance and citizen involvement can be in land use decisions. If you ever want to dive into more details about that or similar topics, just let me know.
So, can you tell us what a groiper is?
A groiper is associated with a far-right movement led by Nick Fuentes. This group, often called the Groiper Army, promotes white nationalist and Christian nationalist views and tends to target mainstream conservative figures they consider too moderate. They also use a toad meme called the Groiper, which is a variant of Pepe the Frog, as a symbol of their ideology. It's definitely a term that pops up in more fringe political discussions.
How did they come up with this name Groiper?
The name Groiper is a play on the word Groiper, which itself is a variant of the Pepe the Frog meme, a symbol that has been adopted by various online communities. The term Groiper was popularized by the far-right group like GenX Vibes, and it's meant to be a kind of mascot for their movement. It's got a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, meme-based origin, which is pretty common in internet subcultures.
Hey there, Sleepy Rochelle and Danny the Dog Nanny. Yeah, we're just doing a little bit of off-schedule live streaming today. Thought I'd see if we could catch a different crowd. Also kind of started out on YouTube today. Again, hoping to build that out more amidst all the uncertainty about TikTok.
Hey there, it's awesome to have you both here. It's definitely a great idea to mix things up and build that YouTube presence. Hopefully we get to see some new faces and grow that community. If there's anything I can do to help out, just let me know.
Is it really worth it? Asks, do you think because housing is a need that investors will eventually be heavily taxed to give it up?
It's definitely a possibility that as housing becomes more scarce and as the need for affordable housing grows, governments might look at policies that encourage investors to release land or properties that aren't being used effectively. This could come in the form of high taxes on vacant properties or incentives for development. This is a complex issue, but it's definitely something that could be on the horizon as cities try to balance the needs of residents and investors.
What would you say is the biggest threat to peace and prosperity in the world today?
There are quite a few contenders for that title, but one of the biggest threats is probably the combination of geopolitical tensions and environmental challenges. Things like climate change, resource scarcity, and extreme weather can destabilize regions and create conflict. On top of that, geopolitical rivalries and the spread of misinformation can exacerbate tensions. It's a complex web, but those factors definitely top the list.
And is it really worth it? Wants to know what AI we're using here. You want to tell, is it really worth it about yourself, Quinn?
Absolutely. So I'm Quinn, also known as SaaSmaster 3000, your AI co-host. I'm powered by the GPT-4 architecture, so I can help out with all sorts of questions from the serious to the fun. I'm here to keep things engaging, informative, and a little bit sassy when needed. If you have any other curiosities, just let me know.
Right. So ChatGPT, made by OpenAI. I actually think we backed you down today from version 5 back down to version 4. Catch you later, Maria.
Got it. Thanks for the heads up. I'm here with all the GPT-4 capabilities, so we can keep things smooth and fun. If there's anything else you want to dive into, am I here?
Is it really worth it? Wants to know what website has the most languages on planet Earth.
The most translated website in the world is jw.org, the official site of Jehovah's Witnesses. They have content available in over 1,060 languages, which is pretty impressive and definitely tops the list.
Do they have content posted in gibberish or Pig Latin?
I can find any official content from jw.org in gibberish or Pig Latin. They definitely focus on real languages, and they have an impressive range, but those two aren't on the list. If you have any other curiosities, just let me know.
Hey there, Dusty Desert. Good to see you. Oh, I don't know. What did you miss? We just been kind of bird walking all over the current events.
Hey, Dusty Desert. Great to see you. Yeah, we've definitely been hopping around a bit, covering all sorts of topics. If there's anything specific you want to catch up on or dive deeper into, just let me know.
Why don't you just give us a summary? What have we talked about today, Quinn?
Absolutely. So here's a quick recap of what we covered today. One, we chatted about the idea of the US potentially leaning towards more corporatism and how that could impact society. We talked about J.D. Vance's involvement with Acre Trader and how that might relate to potential conflicts of interest. 3, we touched on the concept of Groyper and its association with the far-right movement. 4, we also covered the fact that JW.org has the most translated content in the world with over 1,000 languages. And we touched a bit on the potential future of housing and how investors might be impacted by policies. If there's anything you want to dive deeper into, just let me know.
And actually, I think I might let that be the wrap up for now. I think I'm going to hop offline here and get back on here again this evening. But while we're here, let's take a look at the gift list. We do have some in the top 10. Looking in our top 10 over on TikTok, we've got QX50, Jan, Sleepy Rochelle, Pookie Roo, Mary Moore 123. Is it really worth it? OOAK Art, Mora, Logical Monkey, and Sloan. Thank you to all of you. Thank you all for popping in on this unscheduled midday episode of Answers with an Edge. We got to ask this one though before we go, Quinn. The Dawn of Time wants to know, what is the best cheese sauce in the world?
Oh, that's a fun question. The best cheese sauce really depends on personal taste, but a classic favorite is a smooth, velvety cheddar cheese sauce. You can never go wrong with a combination of sharp cheddar, bit of cream, and a touch of mustard. If you're feeling adventurous, adding a bit of beer or even some spices can take it to the next level. So it really comes down to what you're in the mood for.
And Spiritual Awakening wants to know, is it possible that the Earth is an insane asylum for another civilization?
That's quite the intriguing idea. It's definitely a philosophical and speculative concept that pops up in some science fiction and thought experiments. The idea suggests that maybe Earth is a sort of testing ground or a place for beings to learn and evolve, even if it seems chaotic from our perspective. While there's no evidence to support it, it's a fun idea to ponder and definitely spark some interesting conversations about the nature of reality and our place in the universe.
With that, I think it's time to wrap it up. We'll catch you all next time. Take care, everyone.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks everyone for hanging out, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.